The text from my wife arrived at the most inconvenient time. Working late again. Don't wait up. I stared at my phone while standing in the grocery store, a bottle of her favorite wine in my hand. Today marked our 5th wedding anniversary, and I had planned a surprise dinner at home. I put the wine back on the shelf. This was the 3rd time this month she had worked late without warning. Something felt off, but I couldn't quite figure out what was happening. Maybe I was overthinking things. Running a successful physical therapy practice meant unpredictable hours sometimes. But the late nights had multiplied lately, and when she did come home, she seemed distant and distracted. We met 6 years ago at a local coffee shop. I was reading a book at my usual table when she asked if she could share the space since the place was packed. We started talking, and I was immediately drawn to her confidence and warm smile. After dating for a year, I proposed, and we married in a small ceremony with close friends and family. The early years of our marriage were good. We bought a house in a quiet neighborhood, traveled when we could, and talked about having kids someday. We had our disagreements like any couple, but nothing major. That's why these recent changes felt so jarring. It started with small things. Her phone would buzz constantly, but she never checked it when I was around. Her work clothes sometimes smelled like cigarettes all of a sudden. Never used to happen 4 years prior. Each incident on its own seemed innocent enough, but together they started to get my attention. One night I woke up to find her side of the bed empty. I walked downstairs and heard her whispering in the backyard. When she came back inside, she claimed she couldn't sleep and needed fresh air. But why would she need her phone for fresh air at 2:15 in the morning? I tried to talk to her about it. Is everything okay? You seem distant lately. I'm just stressed with work, she replied, not looking at me. We've taken on more patients than ever. I wanted to believe her, but my gut told me she was not telling me the truth. Still, I didn't want to accuse her without proof. Maybe she really was overworked. A few days after our missed anniversary, I stopped by her office to surprise her with lunch. I hadn't been there in about 4 months, with my own work keeping me busy. When I arrived, the security guard had told me she had already left. She left early today, said she had a personal appointment. I thanked him and walked back to my car. I sat there for a long time, trying to make sense of it all. Where was she? That evening, she came home at the usual time, acting as if nothing was wrong. She kissed me on the cheek and asked about my day. Did you have any interesting appointments today? I asked. Just the usual patients. Nothing special, she replied, pouring herself a glass of water. I couldn't believe it. She just lied to my face. In that moment, I knew something was going on. The next day, I checked our cell phone bill online. Multiple calls. The next week passed in a blur of pretending. I went to work, came home, and acted like my world wasn't falling apart. My wife continued her pattern of late nights and vague explanations. I needed more evidence before confronting the situation, not because I doubted what I saw, but because I wanted to approach this logically rather than emotionally. The confirmation came from an unexpected source. My neighbor, who walks his dog early every morning. Hey, everything okay with your wife's car? He asked casually one day while I was getting the mail. What do you mean? I asked. I noticed it's been gone overnight a few times lately, he said. Just wanted to make sure it wasn't stolen or anything. My stomach dropped. I hadn't even noticed her car was missing during the night. I'd been sleeping alone more often, with her claiming she was working late and sleeping in the guest room to avoid waking me. Thanks for looking out, I replied. She's just been working some overnight shifts. But she wasn't. I knew her practice didn't have overnight patients. That night, I pretended to go to bed early. Around midnight, I heard her quietly leaving the house. I waited about 2 minutes, then followed in my car at a safe distance. She drove to a subdivision across town and parked. I watched from across the street as she used a key to enter the house. Before she walked in, she looked both ways as if she was looking to see if she was being followed. She looked comfortable, familiar with the place. I quickly slid out of the passenger side of the car and I took photos with my phone, documenting the address and time. The next day, I did some research online. The house belonged to a man named Michael. I didn't know who he was. I drove by the house at different times over the next few days. Her car was there overnight at least twice more. One morning, I saw them leave together. They kissed in the driveway before getting into separate cars. I took more photos, not because I wanted to hurt her or humiliate her, but because I needed proof for myself that I wasn't crazy. My suspicions were confirmed when I noticed other changes too. She had started doing her own laundry separately from our usual loads. She had a new perfume I'd never smelled before. She took more showers than usual, sometimes immediately after coming home. Her phone was always with her, even when she went to the bathroom. She had changed the passcode recently, something she had never done before. I noticed she had a second texting app installed on her phone. Once, I glimpsed at the app open with messages from someone saved simply as M. Instead of confrontation, I chose preparation. I contacted a divorce lawyer and scheduled a consultation. Document everything, the lawyer advised. Protect your finances and don't mess this up. Don't move out of your home. And don't let on that you know about the affair until we've prepared everything. I followed the advice methodically. I opened a separate bank account and transferred half of our savings into it. I was going to take all of it, but my lawyer said the judge will make me pay it back. I also removed her as a beneficiary from my insurance policy. I took inventory of our assets and debts, all while staying calm and acting like nothing was happening. One evening, she came home earlier than expected and caught me looking at our financial records. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Just organizing our paperwork. Tax season is coming up." She seemed satisfied with the answer and went upstairs to shower. I continued gathering information and evidence over the next 2 weeks. The lawyer prepared the divorce papers based on irreconcilable differences. I didn't want to drag her name through the mud or create a messy public spectacle. I just wanted out. During this time, she became increasingly careless about hiding the affair. Once, she came home with a small gift bag that she quickly hid when she saw me. Another time, I noticed a text notification preview on her phone that she obviously didn't want me to see. Each discovery was like a fresh wound, but I maintained my composure. I had a plan, and I was sticking to it. A couple of times she would try to initiate intimacy, and I would find an excuse to avoid intimacy. I couldn't bear the thought of being close to her while she was seeing someone else. My lawyer finally called to say everything was ready. The divorce papers were prepared. My finances were secured. Now I just needed to decide when to make my move. I chose a Tuesday, knowing she didn't have any appointments scheduled that might be unexpectedly canceled. That morning, I watched her get ready for work like any other day. She kissed me goodbye without a hint of guilt on her face. After careful consideration, I decided to have the divorce papers served at her workplace. My lawyer recommended a professional process server who would handle everything discreetly. "We can do this without creating a scene," he assured me. "The server will be professional, but having papers served at work sends a clear message." I agreed with his assessment. The public location would prevent an immediate explosive reaction, and it gave me time to secure our home. While she was at work, I changed the locks on our house, not to keep her out permanently, that would be illegal, but to control when and how we would next interact. I packed her essential items into a suitcase, clothes for a week, toiletries, medications, and personal items she might need immediately. I placed the suitcase in the garage where she could easily access it. Then I waited. The process server confirmed delivery at 2:17 p.m. I imagined the scene. Her confusion as a stranger approached her desk. the realization dawning as she accepted the envelope, her colleagues pretending not to notice. At 2:22 p.m., my phone exploded with notifications, call after call, text after text. I didn't answer. Instead, I sent one message. I know about the affair. I've left your essential items in the garage. Please respect my need for space. We can discuss logistics through our lawyers. Her response came quickly. You had me served at work? How could you embarrass me like that? This is ridiculous. We need to talk now. I didn't respond again. My friend arrived as planned to stay with me for moral support and protection. We expected she might show up at the house, angry and demanding explanations. She arrived at 5:45 p.m., slamming her car door so hard it echoed through the neighborhood. She pounded on the front door, ringing the doorbell repeatedly. I know you're in there. Open the door. You can't just end our marriage like this. My friend looked at me nervously, but I remained calm. We had agreed not to engage, no matter what. After 15 minutes of yelling and knocking, she went to the garage and took her suitcase. Before leaving, she shouted, "This isn't over. You've made a huge mistake." I watched through the blinds as she drove away, tires screeching. The next day, she called my workplace. My boss, who knew the basics of my situation, screened the call. She seemed extremely agitated, he told me later. Her next move was to send her brother to talk to me. He showed up unannounced, looking uncomfortable with his assigned role. "Look, I don't know what's going on, but she's really upset," he said when I answered the door. "Can't you two just talk this out? Did she tell you why I filed for divorce?" I asked calmly. He shifted uncomfortably. "She said you've been distant and made this decision out of nowhere." I showed him one of the screenshots of her emails with her lover. His face fell as he read it. "I didn't know. I'm sorry." He left without another word. I didn't hear from him or her family again. 3 days after being served, she finally texted something other than demands or accusations. "I've retained a lawyer. She'll contact yours to discuss arrangements." This was the rational response I'd been waiting for. The following weeks proceeded with calm, detached efficiency. Our lawyers handled most communications. We divided assets through legal channels rather than emotional confrontations. When we did need to communicate directly, I kept it brief and businesslike. No accusations, no rehashing the past, no asking why. The facts of her infidelity were clear, and nothing she could say would change them. As the divorce proceedings moved forward, I felt a strange sense of peace. The pain was still there, but it was dulled by the knowledge that I was handling this with dignity. I refused to be the husband who begged his cheating wife to stay. I wouldn't play the role of the heartbroken victim seeking revenge. Instead, I chose to exit quietly but firmly on my terms, or so I thought, until things suddenly changed. 4 weeks into the divorce proceedings, everything changed. My wife's initial shock had faded, replaced by something darker. The controlled, legal approach we'd established suddenly derailed. It started with a late-night visit. My doorbell rang repeatedly at 1:30 a.m. When I checked the security camera, I saw her standing there, clearly intoxicated. I didn't open the door. Instead, I spoke through the doorbell speaker. "Please leave. We can talk through our lawyers tomorrow." "Open the door," she shouted, her words slurring. "You're destroying everything we had over nothing." I repeated my request for her to leave. She responded by kicking the door and screaming obscenities. Eventually, she left after threatening to make me pay for what I'd done. The next morning, I documented the incident and sent the video to my lawyer. He advised getting a restraining order, but I hesitated. Despite everything, I didn't want to escalate the situation further. That was my mistake. 2 days later, I returned home from work to find my house in chaos. The front door was open, windows broken. Inside, furniture was overturned, pictures smashed, walls damaged. Our bedroom was the worst. She had slashed the mattress, cut up my clothes, and spray painted accusations on the walls. I called the police immediately. They arrived quickly, took photos, and filed a report. "Do you know who did this?" an officer asked as he surveyed the damage. "Yes," I answered truthfully. "My soon-to-be ex-wife." They asked if I wanted to press charges. After a moment's hesitation, "Yes, this has gone too far." I stayed at a hotel that night while a security company repaired my locks and a window company repaired my windows. My lawyer filed for an emergency restraining order the next morning. She was served with the restraining order at her parents' house where she'd been staying. Within hours, mutual friends began calling and texting me. "She's telling everyone you abused her," one friend warned. "She's spinning this whole narrative about how you drove her to cheat." I remained silent. I wouldn't engage in a public mudslinging contest. The police arrested her for the break-in 2 days later. She was released on bail with orders to stay away from me and my property. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. A week later, I was leaving work when someone called my name in the parking lot. I turned to find her waiting between cars. Before I could react, she lunged at me, scratching at my face while screaming that I had ruined her life. Security cameras captured everything. 2 co-workers pulled her off me as she continued to kick and scream. The police arrived within minutes. They arrested her for violating the restraining order and assault. As they put her in the patrol car, the fight seemed to drain out of her. For a brief moment, our eyes met. I saw not anger, but something like desperation. I went to the emergency room for the cuts on my face. Nothing serious, but everything needed to be documented for legal purposes. My lawyer called while I was waiting to be discharged. "This changes things," he said. "With 2 arrests and documented violence, we're in a much stronger position." I felt no satisfaction, only exhaustion and a deep sadness for what our relationship had become. Her lawyer contacted mine the next day. They wanted to settle quickly and quietly. In the end, the divorce was finalized with terms more favorable to me than I'd initially asked for. She received mandatory anger management and therapy as part of her plea agreement for the assault and vandalism charges. On the day the divorce became final, I sat alone in my rebuilt living room, reflecting on the past 6 months, the betrayal, the calculated exit, the unexpected violence. I had wanted a quiet divorce, a clean break, a dignified end to something that had once been good. Instead, I got chaos and pain and public drama. But through it all, I never lost control. I never stooped to her level. I followed the legal process and let the system work as it should. A year later, I ran into her brother. We spoke awkwardly at each other before he approached. "She's doing better now," he said. "The therapy helped. She moved to another state for a fresh start. She told me to tell you something if I ever saw you. She said she's sorry for everything." "Thank you for telling me," I replied. We parted without further conversation. That night, I thought about forgiveness, not reconciliation. That door was firmly closed, but the kind of forgiveness that allows you to move forward without carrying anger. I decided it was time to let go of the last pieces of resentment I'd been holding, not for her sake, but for mine. The divorce hadn't been quiet in the end, but I had found my peace anyway, and really that's all I wanted from the beginning. Commentary. I don't have anything negative to say, but in most cases, you can't just kick your spouse out of the marital home. I don't care who owns it, if they are living there with you, unless you have a court order allowing you exclusive possession.